Ally is Diana Giovinazzo.
Yes, thank you.
And we'll have 30 minutes of discussion and then 15 minutes Q&A, and then we'll move on to signing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yes. Thanks for coming, you guys. But I used to be a high school teacher, and I feel like this is like very much the vibe of high school. Nobody has to sit in the front row, but should you feel so inclined, that would be amazing.
Teacher's pets.
Yes, yeah.
In a good way. In a good
Gold
way.
star for you.
So before we get started, could you tell, for those who might not be familiar with the book, because I'm sure many of us are now, but could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, I would love to. So the book just came out 2 days ago. So talking about it has not gotten old yet, because Diana's an author too. She understands, well, I feel this way. You can tell me if I'm right for you, but I love all my books, but the newest one is the baby that has not misbehaved yet. Like, you're a little bit more, I haven't talked about this one as much. You're new and exciting. But yeah, so it's my first adult novel. I've written a lot of young adult, some middle grade, some picture books. And that is exciting for me. It feels fun to play in that kind of new playground. It's a murder mystery about a woman who got divorced, and she goes on a vacation by herself for the first time in a long time. And that part is based on real life. I did go on a trip after my divorce, and I was feeling kind of sad. And the weird thing about that is, especially if you have kids and got married young, which I did, I felt very unmoored. I felt like, whoa, nobody else is here. I'm used to traveling with a spouse or my children or all of the above. And I thought, this will be no problem. I've been on book tour. Book tour is very lonely a lot of the time. I'm gesturing to all my fellow authors in the room. I've done travel. I've eaten meals by myself. But for whatever reason, probably the timing and the situation, I just thought, this is the worst. All the self-help literature says, take your own vacation, be your own person. You don't need anyone else to define you. But I felt like I kind of did. I felt really undefined and weird and murky. And part of that probably was because I wasn't going out as an author either. I was just it kind of felt like I was this weird blob in the world that is just sort of moving around. So I went out to dinner, and I had treated myself this trip to kind of a fancier resort. And so I went out to dinner, and I was, really embracing my power or whatever and sitting there alone. And I thought, this stinks. I'm lonely. But then I started noticing everyone around me, which is what we do a lot as authors. People watching is our forte. And I started making up, which you can tell me if you also do the stories about the couples who are together. Because when you travel alone, then you realize how many people travel together or in packs or in groups. And I thought, that couple looks so happy. That couple's so cute together. And then I started, they're not doing great. You can start just like paying attention. He's taking a lot of pictures of her with her hand like this. I bet she's an Instagram influencer. And so I just started making up stories about everyone else. And I started feeling, instead of sad, I felt like a little more, I don't know, part of the world again. And then I thought, if there were a murder mystery or like a murder here, I would be the only person who could solve it. I have no criminal background. There's no reason that I should give myself that power. But I thought, I'm the only one who's been noticing everyone else. And then I thought, I think I just got a book idea. And so then the rest of the trip was really fun because I was imagining people as characters, and I was turning myself into Miss Marple. So I'm like, I have entered my crone era, and I am going to embrace it. So it was really fun. So that's kind of how I got the idea for the book and started writing it. Nobody was asking for me to write an adult murder mystery. That was not, I wasn't under contract for it. Nobody had ever said, hey, Ally, you should write for adults. So that felt really exciting to think, maybe I'll just try this. Maybe I'll do something new.
Sometimes doing something new is just like the best medicine.
It really is. Yeah.
Yes. So we were talking earlier, you had said that this was your first adult novel that you have done, and you kind of alluded to that earlier.
Yeah.
What was the transition like going from the YA genre into the adult genre?
The transition was actually fairly seamless because, like I said, nobody wanted me to do it, so nobody knew. So I didn't have any pressure. I just kind of felt like I'm going to play around and have fun. But for me, it always starts with and writers come at books different ways, and there's no wrong way to do it. But for me, it's always a person in a place doing a thing. So the character is sort of the beginning point for me. And that wasn't different at all. That was, oh, there's a woman, she's paying attention at a resort. So it's always the character in the spot. And then I figure out what genre this is, what happens here, what market am I writing for? Not that I write to the market, but you do, you're going to make decisions based on that a little bit. If it's a murder mystery, it's going to be different than a picture book. So I did think about that a little bit, but yeah, I also knew I have an agent who is pretty formidable. Sarah, have you met Jody? Yeah. So she's very well known in the industry, and she's 4'11" and a 4th degree black belt, and she represents all genres, fiction, nonfiction, celebrity. She's represented Twilight and John Green and a bunch of big names, and she's terrifying. So she's just teeny tiny powerhouse, tells you how it is. And so I knew that Jody would tell me if it was bad, and she did. And she said, this is not good enough yet, but I see some promise. So we spent a lot of time, she and I, just going back and forth on the book. So that part felt really fun too. I felt like I am stepping out of YA. I am stepping out of something else. And this is a really lucky feeling to have in the industry and as a professional. Jody will not let me fall. Like, we will not send this out unless she's put me through my paces. So that felt good too.
Having an amazing agent is so important. I love my agent too.
I was going to say,
yeah.
I want you to tell me about yours, but yeah.
Oh, my agent's Diana Castillo, and she's just amazing. I love my agent so much. I'm constantly singing her praises.
Yeah.
And she's been in the industry a lot too. And just having somebody who's been in the industry, so that's there. And when you're supposed to be working on another book, I don't know if you do this.
Oh yeah, I was not supposed to be working on this.
Yeah. And I'll send her something like, hey, just this random idea that came up in the middle of the night. It's going to be fabulous. I know it's going to be fabulous. What do you think?
Yeah.
And she'll just sending me an email like the day or two later. You know what? Let's give it a little bit more time. Let's think about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Great idea.
Yeah. I feel like she's constantly having to tell me, slow down.
Yeah. That's a great, I don't know what to call it, like a guardian, an advocate. It's just that extra person that sort of looks out for you, which is lovely to have. So
yes,
I'm glad you have that too.
Yes, same for you. And the black belt part too. That's wow.
It's great. I knew, so this is a funny story that I probably shouldn't tell, but I will anyway. Jody and I like to go to Disneyland together, and she's very small and I'm very tall compared to her, but sometimes we were worried she couldn't get on the rides, but she can go on everything. So we're pumped about that. But she is just this pistol. And so the first book deal I got was for a young adult novel called Matched that I really enjoyed writing. And again, nobody was asking me to do it. I was writing different things. And Jody sold it to Penguin. At the time, it was not Penguin Random House. And this is back in the golden days of publishing, right? Where they flew you out for things. And so they flew me out to New York to meet the publisher, and they did a toast. And Don Weisberg, who was the head of Penguin at the time, said to Jody, and then he said, it hasn't been, I wouldn't say it's been a pleasure, but it has been enlightening. And they were very good friends. They had a great rapport because she just drilled him down on the contract. She really does her homework. So yeah. And I knew she'd do the same for me in the adult world. If I did my job, she always makes me go through. We revised for 1.5 years, I think, before we send it out. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
And being able to put it through the paces
is
so important.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. So now getting into the book itself, the lovely cover up there.
I know we matched. I just want everyone to appreciate that.
I know the cover is gorgeous. Absolutely.
Thanks.
I love Grand Central's art department.
Yeah. We're with the same publisher, and their art department just kills it.
Yes.
So.
Every time. Knocks out of the park. So in between each section, you've got this wonderful little bit where you've got the weather, and then you've got a little piece of art and a thing behind it. And I thought that was just so clever. And being the historical fiction author that I am, I'm like, okay, let's talk about the research that you did with it. And it was a great way to also put in the setting. So we knew exactly what the weather was going to be like when we're reading the book as well. So we knew what was coming into that section. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I love that Diana noticed that. It's fun when people ask questions about that. So not to cite my own novel, but it does look, I think the way they formatted it too, I'm a formatting dork too. So Like it's like those cards you get in your hotel room if you stay at a fancy place, and it tells you the weather and what to expect. And so and the sunrise and sunset. So I added some of my favorite nature quotes. And then also at the resort, there's a bunch of art. There's like a sculpture garden, and there's also art throughout the property that plays a role in the story as well. And my mom is a visual artist. She is a pastel painter and taught art for 30 years at a university in Utah. And so she's a fantastic artist, and I'm garbage. But I have learned to appreciate. I feel like I'm very good at art appreciation now because of her. So when I was thinking about this resort and kind of that liminal space that sometimes resorts occupy in beautiful places at the end of the world, there's this dichotomy between nature might cause some trouble for the resort, but it wants to be luxury. And so art kind of felt like that too, where we're going to put these sculptures out in the garden and kind of inflict ourselves on nature, but also communicate with it. I think the best art does that.
Yeah.
And I think I love a sculpture garden. So I kind of got that idea from the Minneapolis sculpture garden, which is really cool. It has that spoon with the cherry on it, that iconic sculpture, and then a lot of other pieces. But I didn't want to step on any toes or need to spend a lot of money getting permissions for things. And so I just invented all of the art in the book, which was really fun because then I can make up the backstory of the artist and what the piece would look like. And then the nature quotes in there are ones that I've just really loved. Again, to sort of bring home the connection between art and humanity and nature and creation and destruction and all of the things that happen in the world.
And the location, as you brought up, with the resort and being in Big Sur, that in and of itself is such a beautiful place. I don't know if anybody's been there. I'm assuming we've all been there at some point. It's so gorgeous, and setting it there, and reading the book, it's very much a part of, like, a character in and of itself in a lot of ways. And it really plays into the story itself. So I want to talk a little bit about that.
Oh, thanks. So I went on a trip to Big Sur the first time in 2017. And that was the year they had the big landslide that took out everything. And they had to helicopter people out of these luxury resorts because they were trapped. So when I was thinking about a setting for a locked room or like a locked resort mystery, I thought that's actually happened. That doesn't beggar belief too much that they would be cut off, that there would be no way in or out for a few days. So that came to mind pretty quickly. But also I just loved the drama of the landscape and how beautiful it is. And I grew up in southern Utah, which is the Red Rock part of the state. So it's where they film many Planet of the Apes movies and other things, or places they need to be space that are cheap. And so I grew up in that kind of like very barren. I used the word liminal before, but kind of like that. It's a dangerous landscape in a totally different way than Big Sur. Like in southern Utah, we either don't have enough water or we can't handle the water. We do have like flash floods, things like that. And Big Sur had a similar vibe. It's entirely different, but where anything could kind of happen. And so I liked that. But I remember the first time I went there, and I'm no stranger to beautiful places. Growing up in Utah, we're surrounded by it. But I was just floored. There's something about, if you grew up in the desert, you go to the ocean, you just can't believe it. And probably vice versa too, where it just feels, oh, this is so beautiful in a way that I haven't really encountered before. So I wanted to make the setting a big part of it. And I wanted her to be sort of stunned by the setting and working within it. But so research-wise, I had to go back to Big Sur. It's just really difficult.
Oh, darn. The things we do for our books, right?
Well, I was going to say, what about you in research trips? I know it's historical fiction, so you can't go back in time. But
I wish. If I had a TARDIS. But I couldn't for Antoinette's Sister because the day I started working on it 2 weeks before the pandemic happened.
Oh.
So it was, as soon as I got the go-ahead from my agent, like, okay, we're going to work on it. It was a day that the whole world shut down. So I was locked in my office using Google Maps and the little guy in the Google Maps to try to do these own walkthroughs. So it wasn't until about 2022 that I was able to get to Naples. I was able to get to her palace, Caserta, and walk around in the footsteps of that little place where I was walking around with the little guy, finally being able to get there. So I couldn't do my research until later on.
Yeah. Did you find that was the Google guy had done a decent job, or were you like, this is nothing?
He did a decent job.
Props to
I
the
like to call
Google
him the
guy.
little dude.
Yeah.
The little dude did a really good job of doing that. And I also my research was limited, where I'm sure with you were able to do a lot of things and walk around for a lot of places.
Contemporary is so much easier.
Yeah. And especially with the pandemic happening with that, the palaces that I had to choose for the book had to be the ones that allowed for a walkthrough while it was online. So that kind of like limited. So in the author's note, I was like, okay, so I chose this palace, even though she spent a lot of time at this palace. But for research, we went with this palace. So it was one of the things I had to kind of play with.
Yeah, I admire historical fiction writers so much because you have to stick to facts.
Well, I admire like contemporary and mystery because you can't rely on the facts. You have to like make it completely and totally up on your own.
Well, I like this, that we both have great appreciation for what the other does. But I always think historical fiction seems so intimidating, right? But it's one of my favorite genres to read. I love it.
Well, I also love mystery, especially during the summertime. I know a lot of people like to go and do like the romances during the summertime. I like murder during the summertime. I don't know. It's like ice cream. Like the more ice cream you eat, the more murder there is. No correlation with like the heat and all of that.
I love that.
So for me, with loving the mystery and all of that, I'm always curious about building that tension, because that tension is such an important part of mystery, and having to place those little tidbits and clues throughout the book. What thing, did you have any things that you use for it? Any tricks or tips for anybody out there?
Oh man. Yeah. So I always said the one thing I'll never write is a murder mystery because I love it. I've been reading it since I was a kid, and it's just so hard to do well. Particularly, I grew up on Agatha Christie, and it's not just a good problem to solve, it's characters that are interesting. The dialogue stands up, even 100 years later, you're laughing, you get the sense of the person, all of that. And so I just thought, I'll never do that. And then I really wanted to. So I had to kind of go back, but I'd spent decades reading mysteries. My dad took us to England when I was 12 and my sister was 10. And my dad's a big history buff. He wishes I wrote historical fiction. He's great. He's very supportive. But he also believed that you should experience the place through its literature. But he also was like an accessible, he didn't say, and now you will read Chaucer while we're in England. I'm an English teacher. Chaucer's great. But he bought us each this big, like $10 anthology of Agatha Christie. We each had our own little brick to carry around. She had the Miss Marples, I had some Poirots. And so we spent the whole time in the back of the car, no phones, like looking at the scenery, reading our books. And I think that really soaks into you when you're a kid. Like if you're in the place, reading the thing that was set there, it was so fun. And then I've just been reading murder mysteries ever since. So it sounds lazy to say that I was studying it because I wasn't. I was reading and having fun. But if you read murder mysteries for 30 years, you kind of start to know the pacing, how it works. You don't know if you can do it. But yeah, I knew that every character needed to have a secret because Agatha Christie always does that. I knew that it needed to move fairly quickly. I knew that if it's a locked room, there have to be characters playing off each other in certain ways. So I thought about it a lot. And then I did talk to one murder mystery writer who I really respect. And I won't say her name because she's very successful and I don't want to give away anyone else's secrets. But I was kind of lamenting the fact that I wasn't totally sure sure at all what I was doing. And she said, I never know until the end of the first draft who the murderer is, because you want to make it believable for a lot of people to have done it. And that made a lot of sense to me because, like I said earlier, I'm a character-driven writer, and I don't know the characters until the end of the first draft, so I don't know what they would do until the end of the first draft. So that made me happy to feel like I wasn't totally out to lunch. But yeah, I kind of knew who I thought it was, but I wasn't sure. So
that's good. And yeah, definitely you studying books. That's the only way really to truly understand pacing and plots is by studying other people's books. I'm a firm believer in that.
Me too. And who are some historical fiction authors that did you have anyone you kind of looked to or
Philippa Gregory.
okay, yes,
I read all the
yeah.
Tudor books, devoured all of them. She was a big influence for me. Isabel Allende, I love her books. And then Italo Calvino, he was an Italian author back in the day, and I loved his novels. So, If on a Winter's Night, The Traveler, yes, you know exactly. It's such a weird book, but I love it so much because it's so weird. It's like a book that just doesn't quite get going, but yet you have this really great journey through it. It's so wonderful.
That sounds fun. You've been nodding at every book we've mentioned.
Yes.
That's a great title too. Yeah. You must be a huge reader. I was just saying you've been nodding about every book we've mentioned. You're like, yeah. Okay. Oh, okay. A librarian, great. Perfect.
So we have one last question, and the juxtaposition between Ellery and Olivia. I love that so much because both of these women have their own journeys through grief. And so you show that grief in different ways. I'm not giving away any.
No, I'm just
I'm so terrified about that.
It's such a great question. You can tell that Diana's an author and she has a podcast too, because she's asking such fun questions to answer. And I love it when people notice things that you did that you're like, well, anyone, notice that. But so she's talking about two characters. The main character is named Ellery, and she's just gone through a divorce. And then the other character is Olivia. She's a bit younger and she's just about to get married. And so they kind of, I don't know that it's a friendship or an acquaintanceship, but there's sort of an intersection between the two of them that keeps happening that was really fun to write. They're point and counterpoint to each other. Not in a contrived way, but just in a way, sometimes life, this happens to me a lot, brings someone into your life where you are both at the intersection, but in a different place and time. Does that make sense? Like they're both at the marriage intersection, but it's a different marriage intersection. And that was happening to me in my real life too. Just like there were people in my life getting married while I wasn't, but also there were people ahead of me on the journey I was on that we were having some intersections together. And so I kind of wanted to do that. Like you're the unintentional mentor and maybe the really bad mentor, but you're the one who's there if anyone's had that experience. So that was kind of, and then often I found from teaching and from having kids, it's the younger, less experienced person who is sometimes the unexpected mentor as well for how to move through the thing. So not that you want to put that on the younger person, but that's just a thing that happens, I think, sometimes. So yeah.
So that's great. And I believe we're at our
You got a couple minutes left, but
Awesome.
Okay.
a couple minutes to questions.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great. I can ask you questions. We can throw it to the audience.
Yeah, I'd say throw it to the audience.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yay.
I want to know if you're writing another adult next, or what are your plans now that you did this? Do you want to go back to younger stuff or stay an adult, or do both?
Thank you for asking that question, best-selling author Sarah Milanowski. If you guys don't know, this is Sarah Milanowski. She's had movies made out of her book. She's a very big deal and also a very charming, lovely human being and my friend. So, but she has a shelf over there, and you've seen her books everywhere. So what's next? I am working on another adult novel. And I can't say too much about it, but it looks like it will be a mystery, and I'm so excited to be doing that again. It's felt really fun, really freeing. I am also under contract to write another young adult novel, which is what I've been supposed to be doing for a while now. But I just had a young adult novel come out in the fall, so I feel like I'm doing my job. But I'll get back to that soon, and that's fun too. But yeah, adult murder mysteries next, and then. While I'm here in California, I have a couple of picture books coming out in the next couple of years, one of which is with Dan Santat, who is a wonderful, wonderful human being and also the winner of the Caldecott Award for Beagle. And he just won the National Book Award for A First Time for Everything, his graphic novel. So that's...
What are the picture books?
So the picture book that I'm writing with Dan is called Ghostwriter, and it's about a kid and a ghost who leave notes for each other because they both don't think the other is real. And so I can't wait to see what Dan does with that. Like the greatest part of picture books is I write these words and then an actual artist makes things about it. So that's really fun. Yeah. And then the other one coming out is called There. I had a picture book come out last year called Here. And so that's sort of the companion picture book. And those are both illustrated by Jamie Kim, who's just a fantastic illustrator. Everything she does is so pretty. So thanks, Sarah. What are you working on?
I have a picture book coming out too.
Oh my gosh. Is that your first?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I was
My
thinking.
first
But
one. I'm excited. Yeah.
what's it called?
It's called A Dragon for Hanukkah.
Oh, A Dragon for Hanukkah. Is that out this year or is it
In
September?
September.
Oh my
It's
God.
my first picture book. I'm excited.
It's so
I'm
fun.
hoping to do the launch here.
Awesome. Well, you have your own shelf, so I feel like it could happen. Yeah. So fun. And Diana, I know you don't love to talk about what you're working on, but is there anything, do you want to talk about your past book or anything we should check out from you that you'd love us to
we
take
could
a
talk
peek
about
at?
the past stuff
Yeah,
because
that'd be
I'm working
great.
on stuff that I'm trying to keep secret as
And I
best I can. And I'm a big mouth, so it's terrible. Give me some wine and I'll just talk your ear off about what I'm working on next. But my past book, Antoinette's Sister, my most recent one, is you talked about love the ones that you're with. That's my latest one, and I absolutely adore it. Working on it during the pandemic, especially. It's a story of Maria Carolina Charlotte, who was the favorite sister of Marie Antoinette. And by happenstance, she winds up being the Queen of Naples while her sister is the Queen of France. And when her sister is brutally murdered, she vows revenge on France and is one of 3 women to actually stand up to Napoleon.
Wow, I didn't know any of that.
So, and with mine, I have letters in between like the family, because it was the OG helicopter family, really, when it comes down to it, during that time period. So when you had the sections between with your books, with the whole like time and everything like that, I was like, ooh, I love this because I have the letters in mine. So there's something I think special about having those intermediate things between sections and chapters.
It's fun to play with genre a little bit.
Yes, I'm always trying to experiment and try something new.
That's so cool. I can't wait to read it. I got my copy. I saw another hand right here. Yay.
Congratulations on the Reese's Book Club.
Thank you.
How does that come about and what's involved in that?
It's absolute magic. Like, fairy godmothers descend and make all your dreams come true. And I'm kind of not joking. So the publishers, Andy, my publicist is here. He's amazing. Correct me if I get any of this wrong. So the publishers send out lots of books to lots of different people. Reese's Book Club is, now I'm looking at, there's some people from the Reese's team here who are so lovely. They send them out, and like the hope is, particularly with Reese, she's so known for being a tastemaker in a very genuine way, where it's the things she truly loves that she's putting out there. And so they send them to lots of, all the book clubs, all the media outlets, all this, sort of just with the hope that like someone picks it up and likes it. And they're doing it, but you also know it's never going to happen. Like it happens for other people, but it's definitely not going to happen to you. And so I was like, that's so nice that they're sending it everywhere. That shows like that they're a good publisher and they like me. And then Karen, my editor at Grand Central Publishing, reached out to my agent and said, we need to get everyone on a call. And so my agent said, let's get on a call. And Karen said, I need you guys to be sitting down for this. So we did. And I sat on the floor. I was in my office, and I have this very vivid memory of sitting on the floor thinking, this sounds like good news. Please let it be good news. And she said, we've been chosen for Reese's Book Club. And Jody said, I just stood up, because she just popped right out of her seat in her office in New York. And I was sitting on a floor in Utah, and I had the opposite reaction. I kind of went, what? So Jody shot to the sky. I collapsed on myself. Nobody could believe it. It was so exciting. I don't know how I got lucky enough for them to pick my book, but it felt like complete magic. And so that's been just such a fun, surprising I keep saying the word magic, but it does. It feels like just someone came and sprinkled fairy dust on everything. Like launching a book is fun. Writing a book is fun. You don't do it for these moments because you have no control if they'll happen. But if they do, it feels like kind of an explosion of wonderfulness around everything. Like I do kind of float through the day. I'm like, well, you know, the laundry's not done, but Reese Witherspoon picked my book. So, you know, it's kind of like, so I don't know, you know, it's kind of, so yeah, exactly. So that's kind of, but yeah, it is. I don't know what made her pick it, but I am so glad that she did. So, and I don't want to keep you guys longer, but silence doesn't faze me having taught high school. Like I'm just like, you know, someone will come with a question eventually or not. But yeah, yes, Melissa.
So you chatted a little bit about writing advice, anonymous writing advice for thrillers.
Yes.
But what would be your writing advice to someone who has never written a word but really wants to? What's your advice to help them get started?
Oh, I'm going to make Diana answer this one too.
Read everything from the back of shampoo bottles to the classics. Everything.
Yeah. And I think, particularly if you're writing a book, it's good to read books because story is structured in that way. But I also feel like it's great to get your stories from everywhere. Just enjoy story. Spend time in it. For me, I love movies. I love music. One of the things, though, that's kind of unexpected that is probably not the biggest, but one of the most fun places I get stories is sports. Like I just love sports. And so like I was really into the Michael Phelps story, which Andy, I can't believe. So Andy was Michael Phelps's publicist when he was, yeah, when he was, but it was like Beijing, right? So right when everything was the craziest, and his story is so fascinating. Like you can't write that. You know, real life is so interesting. And then Simone Biles, I've been following her trajectory. I mean, this thing, nobody could write this. It's so unbelievable. And I grew up a big Giants fan. My son's more on top of it now than I am. Because in Utah, we have no pro baseball team. So we just get to pick. And my dad picked San Francisco when Willie Mays was playing for the Giants. And so, but every story in sports is so interesting. I'm intrigued by the WNBA drama right now. So it's just so, like, if you're interested in story, get that however you can, however feels most natural to you, and then spend a little time writing your own story. So memoir is great, but not necessarily memoir. And for me, I don't know if you find this to be true. Even if I can't write every day, like a lot, if I just sit down and kind of look at the manuscript or type a few words, then it puts my subconscious to work.
I forgot who said it, but they were like, I can't edit a blank page.
Yeah.
And you always just put something down, anything down, and make it a priority in your life. Like it's your thing. This is your time. And whether it's self-care, just a time to be able to just sit down and just get the words out there, get those emotions and things out there. It's so important.
Yeah. Sarah, do you have anything you would? I'm sorry, I keep throwing it to you. But I kind of want to know what Sarah and Diana would think about everything too. So, yeah.
Walk out the outside world, just sit down, put your butt in the chair,
Yeah.
and write the book. You have to just write it. You just have to do it.
Yeah. Nobody else will do it for you.
No.
Yeah. Like
you can read everything. You can, try different tricks, but you have to actually write the words.
Yeah.
It's the hardest yet easiest thing in the world to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so frustrating. But sometimes, and I think that's why I liked Michael and Simone and like these athletes. I think, well, Michael swam with weights tied to him every day of the year, except for the day he got his wisdom teeth out. Again, correct me, but I did read the memoir several times. And all I have to do is like, like it's so easy compared to what Michael was doing or Simone Biles or, just athletic stuff seems so hard. So just doing this seems probably pretty manageable.
My husband was in the military, so
oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I'm like, okay, I don't have to like dodge rockets or anything. So I can just sit here in my pajamas with my dog and write. And meanwhile, he was over there like in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I'm like, okay.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that would be like a very
that's
very
the
clear.
extreme.
Wow. Yeah. Yes, Andy.
And Then There Were None is my favorite premise for a book of all time.
I love it too. Yeah.
So I'm so curious, if if I were to write a thriller or a murder mystery, I would be tempted to like have a very high body count. Like, characters and like 13 of them would be dead. So I'm just curious, like, when you wrote this is your first time writing in this genre, were you tempted to just keep going with it, or did you have restraint and know that you really wanted to sort of keep it kind of focused and not kill everyone you figured out?
Andrew, this is so great to get this insight into your personality. You seem so mild-mannered. Daniel's like, I've known all along. No, but I love that premise, and I love so if you're not familiar with it, And Then There Were None is an Agatha Christie novel where you've had 80 years to read it or whatever, so we'll spoil it. Almost everyone ends up dead. And so no, because I actually this is maybe weird, but I don't like killing people. And I think that, so my dad he just retired, a judge, and he had to do actual murder cases and things like that. And so he was always very respectful of, he wouldn't talk about the case until, he could. And at one point he had to serve both the defense and the prosecution waived their right to a jury, which never happens. And so he had to decide guilt or innocence in a death penalty state. And I mean, it was wild. And so he talked a lot about how he doesn't like most procedurals or things, because he's like, it's a real person. Like, he was very much respectful of when a crime is committed, it is committed against a human being. That said, I'm making this up so I can do whatever I want. And I still just couldn't do it. And so, no, I was like, I probably have to kill someone else because there's usually 2 murders. So who should that be? And Jody, again, my agent, is very bloodthirsty. She's great. But she said, she was laughing because she said, Ally, they all just keep bonking their head and dying. Which, if you read the book, is true. Like, they do just sort of fall and hit their head a lot. Like, I don't, and I have access, thanks to my dad and some friends, to a lot of better ways to die, but I'm like, they'll just die like that. So in my next murder, they need to not just bonk their head and die. But Jody also was really like, you'll like this, Andy, have you met her yet? Yeah, in person too. I know you met on the phone. So she's the greatest thing. But she said, this has nothing to do with death. I just really want to tell this story. Well, it has to do with death, but she's nothing to do with murder. She kept saying in the first drafts, you're having Ellery really overreact to finding the body. And I was like, no, she's not. She's like undone. She's crying. She's like, whoa, what do I do? And we just kept butting heads on this. And she said, I need you to dial it down. And I kept saying, she found a dead body. And then Jody finally said, it was several months into this conversation, well, when I found a dead body, I didn't react like that. And if you know her, you can picture this. I said, wait, what? You've been holding out on me all this time. When did you find a dead body? Well, at a fancy resort at a destination wedding. What? I mean, that's the whole premise of my book. And it was so sad. So I guess the bride's father died and on the beach, and Jody was out walking early in the morning and found him. And she said, no, I didn't overreact. I mean, it was very sad, but I just got on the phone. I got things done. And I was like, well, okay. So I defer to you as the only person I know who's found a dead body at a resort during a wedding weekend. So I did change it to kind of reflect Jody's lived experience. But yeah. So then I was introduced. So what happened? She said, well, they still had the wedding because everyone had flown there. So it's just like, I know, but that just brings it all back. But yeah, I think, Andy, I'm going to get better at murder. Yeah.
It takes practice.
Yeah. There will be 3 people who die in the next one for sure. So yeah. No one's going to bog their head.
So, in terms of plotting, I love the idea that it's character driven, and you yourself were not clear on who had done it until you finished the first draft. How do you, did you outline it all, or just like kind of a vague outline, or how did that work? How did the architecture work?
That's a great question. So I didn't outline, but I do keep a running outline. So I don't outline the book beginning to end, but as I write the book, I keep an outline of what scenes I've written, what scenes I think I'd like to write, what scenes would make sense for the character, I think. And then as I get there, I see if they do. But I have a wall next to my desk that I have Post-its on where I also move things around, because I've learned you use two different parts of your brain. And I did this naturally. I think we all do. But if I get stuck in the book, I write by longhand in a notebook. Do you do that too?
Mm-hmm.
And we just sort of naturally do that, right? Like, and then for the Post-its, I would write down the characters, their secret, their motivation, why they might have committed the murder. And then I would move that around on the wall, kind of based on, this sounds super creepy and a beautiful mind, I'm realizing. But I would move that around on the wall, like kind of based on where the story was flowing. Like, okay, this character I thought maybe would kill them because of this, but actually this is their motivation. And so there is a lot of sort of loose plotting happening even when you're not plotting. I don't know. Is it with historical fiction? Do you have to outline?
Yes.
Yeah, I cannot imagine any other way.
We get into this on the podcast a lot, and I am like the queen about outlining. I love outlining because for historical fiction, because there's certain points that you have to hit. Like I can't have them somewhere else. And when historically they're at, she's in Naples, I can't have her go off to France and go save her sister. This doesn't happen. So I like to say that a good outline is like a roadmap. And while you're hitting those points, you might want to divert and go off a different path. But at the end of the day, you got to get to 7-Eleven to get your slushie. So you have to have your map to be able to get there, even if you go off the path. So you have your room to like wiggle around, but you got to get there at some point. Also, my brain, ADHD and all of that, if I don't have a plot, they're going to wind up in like Jamaica or like Mexico or somewhere like that. It's completely off track of where they're supposed to be.
Yeah. Sarah, you're very productive. I get the sense that you outline.
I do.
Yeah.
I outline every single book except for my first one, which has no plot at all. But everything else is, I'm very serious about my outline.
Yeah.
20 to 30 pages.
And I like to ask that, throw that out there, because there's no wrong way to do it. Your process is your process. There's probably better ways. Like I feel like not outlining is outlining is much better, right?
Yes. But it depends on what the book needs as well. And so there's no one way to write a book is really what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's fun. And I love hearing about other writers' processes because I always am so, I don't know, it's intriguing to me.
This is related.
Oh, good.
Has your process been the same for every book, or has it evolved or changed?
Can I do that one first?
I think it's kind of evolved in some ways. I think when I was writing my first book, The Woman in Red, I had a daytime job. I was a paralegal. So I was working in a law office and then coming home and staying up way longer than I should to write the book. And then once I got the Antoinette sister, I stopped working in the law office. Actually, I stopped with The Woman in Red as soon as the pandemic hit. I was like, okay, I'm out. I did not want to work in the law office anymore. And so working at home, I think the discipline, I had to actually discipline myself where, okay, I'm gonna write from 8 a.m. till lunchtime. This is when I'm gonna write, and I take the afternoon off, and then I write again in the evenings, because my husband's, that's when he's at work. So just having that process and that routine that's evolved and helped me a lot.
Yeah. My process hasn't changed a lot in that it's still messy. I did co-write several middle grade books with an author friend of ours who is a fantastic outliner. And I thought, this is going to change everything when I wrote with him, because everything was outlined. And I thought, from now on, I shall be No, it was so frustrating. My very next book, I couldn't do it. Apparently that's just not the way I write.
I feel like there's a sweet spot with outlining, because there's some people who use Excel to outline their books, and I've opened an Excel sheet and I'm just I don't know, it's like a whole other language. I don't know what's happening. I'm more comfortable in Word. I just that's too much. So I can understand.
And even formatting wise, there's a writing program called Scrivener. I don't know if people are familiar with that. Yeah, I used that to co-write those books because that's what he wanted to use. Failed on Scrivener, back in Word. It's just so frustrating.
So Scrivener's a whole other topic. Yeah, that's a whole other topic to get into.
So my process has kind of stayed the same. but also not. I mean, every book is different.
Mhm.
It really is, and that's
They're
the
like
fun
children.
part
I think we mentioned that earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, they're like children, and you go with what the child needs.
Oh, I like that. You just parent them along. Yeah.
Mhm. And then once they're out in the world, you just kick them out the door.
Yeah. They just
You're out of the
bonk-
nest. Somebody else has to deal with you now.
Yeah, maybe they do bonk their heads a lot. Like
Yeah.
that's just kind of
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
Anybody else? Great. Thank you guys. That was
Thank you.
a robust round of questions. And huge thanks to Zibby's for